Welcome back to the channel, everybody. I know the glare the glare off my glasses is kind of crazy. Let me see how it looks with the lights off. Oh yeah, that's too dark, and there's still a glare. But we're gonna go ahead and hop into this video. We went to Canada to see the U.S. product boycott, or product boycotts, and what we found was striking. This is uploaded by CNBC. Original link will be in the description. With that being said, what's smoking on my dragons? Divine, righteous, almighty, great, overachieving, never slacking. We flying over to Canada, and yeah, let's learn something today, as usual.
This section here traditionally would have been filled with U.S. corn. Customers love it because it's a great product. What started as a big display has been shrunk.
In response to U.S. tariffs and President Trump's threats to annex Canada, 71% of Canadian consumers say they intend to buy fewer American products this year. That's having an impact. The U.S. economy could lose up to 0.3% of its GDP, or...
Shout out to Canada for being strong, being united, and standing on business about their nation. Shout out to them.
About $90 billion in 2025 due to the boycott of American goods and the decline in foreign tourism. Giancarlo Tremarchi is the owner of Vince's Market, a Canadian grocery store chain with 4 locations. He's seen the backlash firsthand.
Talk to me a bit about how the Buy Canada movement has affected you at the grocery store.
Our customers are demanding from us as much Canadian product as possible. They're getting frustrated and upset when they see too much U.S. product.
Yeah. We've obviously seen the very visible and visceral reaction from markets to U.S. policies, but it's very interesting to see from the consumer side what impact it's having. And these little acts of activism from consumers who have decided to turn their back on certain U.S. products.
If there was a Canadian version and an American version, we probably already delisted the American version and supported the Canadian product because that's what our customers are looking for.
And several countries, including Canada and Mexico and some in the European Union, are responding to aggressive U.S. trade policies with retaliatory tariffs of their own.
The U.S. tariffs look like they're going to last for the duration of the Trump administration in one form or another. That's going to keep other countries kind of in a negative mood towards U.S. goods and services.
So what impact is the boycott on U.S. goods and travel having? And is this just a political statement or a permanent shift in buying behavior? CNBC went to Canada to find out. Vince's Market got its start in Toronto in 1986 and serves about 30,000 customers weekly.
March was when the real tariff threat was like all the news. We had Canada flags everywhere in the store.
Tremarchi says since then, his customers have moved decisively away from U.S. products.
At the height of when we are out of Canada's growing season, we could be upwards of 60%, 70% American produce, okay? Right now, we're only running at about 30%.
Canadian flags and labels mark domestic goods in aisles, while apps like MapleScan help shoppers identify origin.
You take a photo of a product, the app will scan what that product is, figure out what it is, the label, look up information online about it, essentially compile all that information together into a product page to kind of give you information about like the company's history, who it's been owned by in the past versus now, what are its Canadian ties.
But some items are hard to replace.
Mangoes and pears you can get from different parts of the world. When you get into things like Anjou and Bartlett pears, right now you can only get them from the United States.
The most in demand and the hardest ones to replace from the U.S. is typically berries, citrus, and greens, lettuce.
If there is produce from the U.S. and produce from Canada, and they're the same, of course, I'll go Canadian, of course.
We've always been very pro-Canadian, even way before all this stuff happened. This just reinforced it.
Canada is America's second largest food export market, worth $28.4 billion in 2024. The boycott has impacted other parts of the store too.
How is that affecting kind of these perceived American products like Coca-Cola or Lay's?
Yeah, Coca-Cola and Lay's are great examples of global brands. They actually bottle Coke bottles in Canada, about an hour and 30 minutes north of here. Frito-Lay uses Canadian potatoes. There would have been no identification of where Frito-Lay products were made. It would have been small and on the back. Once they realized that they were getting a bad rap, they went ahead and they added Made in Canada labels permanently onto the bags.
American staples like wine, beer, and spirits have seen the biggest change being wiped off Canadian shelves. Earlier this year, multiple Canadian provinces announced they were pulling American alcohol from their store shelves. And in March, Canada imposed a 25% tariff on all U.S. alcohol products. A 25% tariff on distilled spirit imports from Mexico and Canada could cost more than 31,000 U.S. jobs.
So we're in our wine section now. Our wine business, roughly 35-40% of our red wine sales is California cabs and blends. So that's $60,000 a week in sales that are just gone. They've evaporated from the United States. We're replacing it, and we're replacing it with import wines from France, from South Africa, from Australia, from New Zealand.
So we're in the business of junk removal.
We're the dream team.
Sounds like Canada was, this is all they needed to really come together. He said they was already united, or they was already pro-Canada. So pretty much this just, made them even stronger within their pride. But I guess Americans that never really been to Canada like that, we would never really know because they humble about it, they quiet about it.
We're replacing it, and we're replacing it with import wines from France, from South Africa, from Australia, from New Zealand.
In 2024, Canada was the U.S.'s top export market for alcohol, exporting $435 million worth of wine, $221 million in distilled spirits, and $41 million in beer to Canada. The loss to the U.S. is a boon to Canada, with the Buy Canada movement adding roughly $10 billion to the country's economy. Giancarlo thinks if the tariff dispute is resolved, the boycott might ease, but it's unlikely every customer will go back to buying American.
So I actually just had to respond to a customer from last week that came in and felt like we had too much American product, and they told us they're not going to shop at our store anymore.
And just
oh yeah, they're not playing around over there. Whew, customer came and said they felt like y'all got too much American product. Yeah, they're not. Listen, my fellow Americans, they're not playing. They not. They been taking this very serious, and I see a good coming out of all this. Eventually I do feel like people are going to eventually say, hey, you know what? Let's come back together. After whatever chaos is done. Obviously we're in some weird times, but from everything I'm studying, just listening to various people talk from all type of different just places in the world, and when I come to my own conclusion, I truly feel like when all this stuff is over with, all the chaos, once we hit our peak, I feel like people are gonna be like, you know what? Let's come together. I feel like better people, more caring people who are about the people are gonna start getting into position more, and I do think nations will start to come together when it's all said and done. Maybe that'll be a long time from now, but I believe it's gonna happen.
it's like shelves are being cleared of American products, international travelers are clearing their travel plans to America, turning away from the country as a destination. More Canadians visit the U.S. each year than from any other country. In 2024, 20 million Canadians visited the U.S., generating $20.5 billion in spending. But the flow is slowing. Online travel searches from Canada to the U.S. dropped 50% this spring.
If you look at Canadian drive traffic, it was down nearly 30% in March. Air travel, not as bad. Combined, it was down about 15%.
And you hear it anecdotally, either Canadians staying in Canada for vacation or going to somewhere else like Europe.
Businesses along the northern U.S. border report plunging revenues, vanishing foot traffic, and uncertainty over survival.
When you look at that border traffic, as you said, Michigan, obviously with Windsor and Detroit right there. When you look at New York State, Buffalo, they've taken the brunt of that fall in Canadian travel.
And it's not just Canada. Across the Atlantic, travel to the U.S. from Europe is also dropping.
Sort of early indications from Europe that might be the case too. A core saying that bookings from Europe to the US are down 25% over the summer period.
The pullback is costly. The U.S. is on track to lose $12.5 billion in international visitor spending this year compared with 2024. It's part of a sharp reversal over the past decade, but tensions tied to trade and immigration are making it worse.
It's about $200 billion that these international travelers spend. That's bigger than all of our agricultural exports combined. We need these travelers here, obviously, from a job standpoint, a spending standpoint. When these travelers come, They do nothing more than come, spend their money, and go home and tell their friends and family to do the same thing. It's free money. So discouraging these travelers, letting this deficit grow as we seek to balance the trade deficit, we're only digging a deeper hole. What are we doing to send a message that we want you coming to the United States? And that's what's been missing.
From goods to getaways, the impact of U.S. policy is reshaping international behavior, and the ripple effects may be long-lasting. The boycotts that began in Canada have spread. European consumers frustrated with American foreign policy are rejecting U.S. companies as well. And anger over Trump's comments about annexing Greenland led 44% of European consumers to say they're shifting away from U.S. products, no matter what happens with trade negotiations.
Tesla, McDonald's, these being front of mind, some of these really big household US names that they've just been rejected by some consumers in Europe.
Tesla has seen the brunt of the boycotts. Its European car sales have tanked for the 5th straight month in May, with sales plunging almost 28% from brand damage, increased competition, and the political views of CEO Elon Musk.
I want to temper the optimism a little bit. It's tough out there. I mean, the markets, particularly in the U.S. and then developed Europe, I'll say, remain very subdued. The trends at total distilled spirits, which would be total spirit takeaway, in these markets are not anywhere near where they were 2 or 3 years ago.
The fallout from America's trade wars is no longer limited to tariffs and boycotts. Global growth is now projected to slow by nearly half a percentage point as a result.
In terms of global GDP growth, that is a big number because the annual growth is maybe like 3.5 or 4%, and you're taking 1% off of that. That's a pretty big hit.
What we're starting to see in the data is that American manufacturers based in the US are starting to increase prices as a response to lowering volumes in other countries, like Canada, for example.
But still, there's hope that the trade tensions will ease over the long term.
Do you think that this will be a long-term trend?
I think there will be some long-term impact where American products and American brands will be negatively impacted long-term. But I do believe there's a point where we get back to a balance of an interconnected food system, because just that serves the best needs of our customers, both sides of the borders.
Well, what have we learned, America? We learned that people may not need us as much as we think, and not everybody's gonna fold and bend to and bow down and kiss the ring. As much as there's a lot of Americans out here who they think that people will just bow down and kiss the ring. No, that's not the case at all. Once again, shout out to Canada for just, having the pride they have. And I still hear a lot of Canadians talk pretty, respectfully on America. They definitely don't want this, no type of beef, a lot of them. Obviously, there's going to be the ones that are going to comment possibly on this video and say things like, oh, you're the enemy, or I've had that, but if you think I'm the enemy, then I don't know what to say to you. Like, honestly, if you think I'm the enemy, then trust me, there's a lot of other people pages you could go to and say that. I'm definitely not the enemy. Only, I guess, if you see me for whatever reason is that. But with that being said, y'all let me know what y'all think in the comments. Original link in the description, and I'll be back with more soon. Much love.